17 now. Two NGOs, the Kenya Human Rights Commission and the Africa Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, can now breathe a sigh of relief after the acting Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i revoked an order to close them down. There was drama at AFRICOG offices yesterday when KRA police arrived seeking to take away stationery in what the court order termed as a criminal investigation. But AFRICOG lawyers managed to ward off the KRA officers, accusing them of attempting to perpetrate an illegality. The drama came just a day after KHRC was shut down by NGOs Coordinating Board for non-compliance. But the big question has been, why the attack on the rights bodies now? In studio with me, just first of all, getting the full scope of what is happening by virtue of the fact that there was a PPO Act in 2013 which was passed. Did it go through or not?
Thank you very much. This law was passed in 2013, and until now it has never been operationalized. The then Minister for Devolution, Anne Waiguru, tried to do it, but I think, I don't know what happened.
And maybe just so that we are clear, maybe just to describe what the PPO Act is and what it was supposed to achieve.
The Public Benefits Organization Act is an act that was passed to basically bring all those organizations amongst the organization. It had aspects of the organizations cooperating and also bringing, as you know, most organizations, not all organizations are registered under the NGO Coordination Board. We have others that are registered as a company limited by guarantee. It's perfectly within the law. We have CSOs. So this act was meant to actually bring all these organizations, although registered under different regimes and mechanisms, under one body. And as soon as it's operationalized, it was supposed to take over the activities of the NGO board as it is. So as we know it, the NGO Boards Act as we know it, to take this up and operationalize this PPO Act so that we avoid the problems that we are seeing today. These organizations, it was not meant, the relation between the NGO and the regulators and the NGOs should not be master-servant kind of relationship. I think it should be kind of, NGOs are their clients. So even when it comes, because I know that of course, compliance is very, very critical, that all organizations must comply. And for example, in my organization, I know that I do not have to wait, to be reminded to be able to file my tax returns, for example.
Correct.
So compliance is very, very critical. So when you have highlighted for you to realize that maybe they have not complied. So I think this is the problem. I'm hoping that this can be worked out so that, because these organizations, Michael, I can tell you, they employ hundreds of Kenyan people. So before you decide to strike them off, you should have, thought about how are these hundreds going to...
Okay, we'll come to the legal side of it because yes. As much as, yes, they do employ a good number of people, yes, then they have to abide by the law.
Of course.
But of course, there's also the question of timing, why this is happening right now, and we'll come to that. But let me hear from you, Jedida Wakonyo.
Find that civil society is usually targeted when they come forth very strongly and resist certain aspects of government. It's really an attack on the freedom of expression and association. Right now, if you look at the two civil society, that's the Human Rights Commission and AFRICOG, have been instrumental in litigating on aspects that the government is not happy about. If you look recently, they were among the Sauti Yangu Kura Yangu campaign, initiative, and they came out strongly against their thoughts on how this election was carried out. So, and if you look back, if you think about in the 90s, you had Clarion, which was a civil society also, went through the same process of being, the government comes down on you. So the timing is really suspect. However, there is no time, you can't say right now you can't do justice.
Right.
But if you do it...
is justice anytime.
Anytime and all the time. But when you do that, if someone has been unjust or has done anything irregular, remember the first principle is you're innocent until proven guilty. So there are very many laws in this country that you can take someone through. The principal law is natural justice. We have a framework that is called the Administration of Justice Act, and that says that if you take any administrative action, there is a process. It not only has to be swift, like we have seen. There is a way of refused. You have not written to them and told them we would like exactly. You've gone there with a full contingent of security officers, like you're criminals. I think that's not the way to treat
but
civil
we do know
society.
that KRA sometimes will do a sting, and a sting is basically designed to catch you off guard because you've already, if it is to do with taxes, there is a law that requires that you bring in your taxes and file your taxes within a certain time, which is in the public domain. So if your taxes have not been up to speed, really, they say that ignorance is no defense. Dominic?
Very true.
Yes, I agree. I agree. That, of course, every organization, every person has to do their job. You know, KRA must do their job. But just like she said, they can catch you committing an act. I mean, it doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't have to be like that, Dominic. But you see, the thing is, if you're supposed to do a certain speed within a certain area, the reason why they are catching you is because you've already gone over the speed limit. Now, in this particular case, if it is an incident of tax evasion or non-compliance when it comes to the tax laws, you've already flouted those laws.
Yes, I agree. And of course, I commend the KRA and all organizations that are vigilant to ensure that every NGO, every organization is operating within the law. And as I've always said, that it is up to you. If you're running an organization, please ensure that you operate. Or if, for example, an employee has a problem, before you fire her, you have to give her notice and say, look, you flouted this and this, you did this and this. Can you explain yourself? So I think that KRA and all these other regulators needed to have had a procedure where they say, fine, AFRICOG, we have realized that you haven't filed your tax returns for how many years? Can you explain yourself? Is there a reason why we should not deregister you? I think this is what should have been done instead of just going and, ambushing the way.
I think there's a wrong assumption we are making that these NGOs have been existing without any compliance annual accounts. So we cannot move from the assumption that they are guilty of something. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. I think that's very important. And Kenya Human Rights Commission is an old civil society. An old civil society, actually a civil society that was even very instrumental in the formation of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, which is a constitutional commission. So you cannot sit here and begin to assume that after 20 plus years, they've just they've forgotten about their tax returns. The PAYE would have already been on their doorsteps because that's a monthly statutory return. How do we treat people in this country when they dissent? Do we embrace them? Do we even have the time to listen to them? And if we don't, that is what is going on in this country. And we have to be very careful. Because today, it will be the Kenya Human Rights Commission and AFRICOG. Tomorrow, I don't know who else it will be. And then remember, KHRC and AFRICOG are a representation of the entire civil society, which includes a civil society that go beyond the realm of human governance and human rights to health, to education, to water, and so forth, agriculture. So we are talking about a big issue. And that is why, for me, when Daniel speaks about the PPO Act, it is very taking place. And all that is required, it is not even the Minister of Interior. It is the minister in charge of devolution. That is what the law says. He, because right now it's a he should just give an operational date. And that's a constitutional issue. That is all. As a national commission and civil society, people have gone to court. And right now, as we speak, they're in contempt of a court order.
All right, Daniel, looking at what's going on, and again, with the same argument that Jedida has used, that we cannot sit here and assume that they have done anything illegal. But equally, we cannot assume that their books are in order because we don't know. That is the job of the government to come in and using that AFRICOG apparently and other organizations may be part of those who are pushing towards going to the Supreme Court to contest the presidential results.
Yeah, I think, we cannot downplay the role of the civil society in terms of reaching us where we are today. The democratic gains that we have, some of them are thanks to the civil societies. Even some of the most dictatorial regimes, I think they allow the civil societies to operate. As they say in political science, in any political system, you must be able to achieve political equilibrium. Politicians, political systems, make sure that sometimes So these organizations play a very, very important role. And sometimes if you clamp on these, then actually you clamp on the only avenues.
It's like trying to muzzle the voice of the people.
Yes, once you muzzle the voice of the people, then you never know what could happen. When you muzzle them, you never know. It can erupt in a much worse situation. So every organization has their role. The civil societies play a very, very critical role. What I would ask the current regime is, instead of clamping down on them, make them your partners. Sit down with them. You remember when President Kibaki came to power, he actually accommodated the civil society. And some people are saying that actually he killed civil society because most Mr. Matiang'i, he has been very, very successful on wherever he goes in education. And I really applaud what he did yesterday by ordering a hold on what the NGO Act did. I think this is the way to go. Let's have a discussion with these organizations. Let's look at the issues. We cannot wish away some of the issues that they're trying to address. Let's address them and see how we can move the country forward.
All right. Victor here says that NGOs are notorious for being funded by foreign governments to destabilize local governments. Your comments to that, Jedida? There's always this perception that NGOs are funded by external governments, and normally they're there just to spoil, to muddy.
And in areas where the government has been absolutely absent in terms of service delivery, has been by those civil societies that are funded by those foreign governments. Remember, that money from the foreign government is from the publics of that country. So it's from their public coffers, and they have extended that hand. How come we do not say that when it comes to health, when it comes to education, when it comes to water, but we say that when it comes to human rights and governance? Why do we draw that line? It is because human rights and governance produces an aspect called accountability and brings a stop to what we call a culture of impunity. And many people in this country don't want to be asked questions. No sourcing of funding. So how come we don't say that? I think, and if there's that allegation, let's be specific. Let's say this civil society in particular was given so much and it did that kind of sabotage. And then you deal with, that's a criminal matter. That's a security issue.
And it can be raised one-on-one. It's not just a blanket cover on all of them.
You don't condemn wholesomely. You can't do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Daniel, given that civil society most of the times is out to watchdog, as it were, the government on places where maybe they're not doing things right, they're likely to rub the government the wrong way. How is it expected that they would work together? Because obviously, if they're rubbing them the wrong way,
in kind. I think the best way to go about it is, to encourage dialogue and partnership, because as Jedida said, most of these organizations play a very, very critical role. I know that it is the responsibility of government to provide services, but as she said, there are certain organizations that actually complement what the government is not doing. Let me just say, if you look at, for example, the issue of voter education, the problem that we have right now, where people...
And one that came up just as we were getting to the elections.
Whereby we have, for example, youth in the opposition stronghold who think that when, for example, Raila lost, they think they lost. But it requires civic education to tell these youth that, look, you didn't lose any There is, of course, a symbiotic relationship between these organizations and government. For example, IFES, look at IFES, for example. They also had the similar problem. But look at our elections today has been funded a lot by IFES. Most of the activities of IBC and government benefits from taxes. The government benefits from most of their employees being, their citizens employed by this very, very civic education. If government had solutions to everything, then they would employ everyone. Yeah, so we must look at all the civil societies and NGOs to be, we look at them as partners who actually supplement whatever government is trying to do.
Whatever they're trying to do. Jedida, we need to wind up because of time and possibly your closing comments and the way forward in this particular regard. What you'd expect?
Allow me to say a few things. First of all, I think it's very important for Kenyans to read the Public Benefits Organization Act 2013. 4 years. We have taken 4 years just to implement a very beautiful legislation. One of the rare, it's the only act that actually has a preamble, like the Constitution, which explains where we are coming from and why we are doing what we're doing. And allow me to read this, and it speaks to the last discussion. Part of the preamble says that public benefits organizations are increasingly involved in complementing the county and national government in all spheres of public service delivery and of the primary role of the government of Kenya as a duty bearer. This, if you read the preamble, it's really speaking to a partnership between civil society and the government. It's not talking about a war or a conflict. This the PPO Act has a mechanism of internal regulations where you begin institutionalizing civil society with all the structures internally, and external accountability where you comply with all the compliance mechanism. It begins to reduce conflicts of interest within civil society organization. It helps us come together as civil society and bring the voices of all the Kenyans under that umbrella. So it's a very good legislation. My appeal to the Minister of the Devolution, that's the Honorable, the CS Kunjuri, is to really put his pen to paper and operationalize this act. It will be much, much easier.
Why isn't it operationalized? What's the drawback? 3 years is a long time.
4 years.
4 years.
Because it was in January 2013 that the President sent a tweet. It just needs an operational date. You know, according to the Constitution, Article 116, it says that legislatively, a lot of the legislations have been automatic. Once they are sent to, they are gazetted, then they become law. But where in that act there is a clause that says the minister or the cabinet secretary involved will give an operational date for good reasons, then then you have to wait for that date. All that the minister needs to do is to give it tomorrow, and this will become law. And all this stuff we have here will not be there. But all I ask is, let us follow the law. The rule of law is critical, and the rule of law is absolute. And as a state organ, all state organs are obligated to respect human rights. It's not optional, and that is what this constitution is calling of us.
All right, your closing comments, Daniel?
Yeah, let me just add that everyone in Kenya has to operate within the law. Civil societies, organizations, you know, they have a duty to operate within the law. My advice, my call to the CS, you know, this was moved now from devolution to interior.
But the law is very clear.
Yeah, I know the law is clear.
Those are administrative moves that are irregular.
Yes.
The law is very clear.
What I want to say is that we are in a very critical time. I know the timing, we have been talking about timing. Everything is timing. We are in a situation where we have an election dispute, and I think the government needs a lot of goodwill, also from some of the civil societies. So I think, and I mean, I'm not saying it is the wrong time to question compliance, but I'm saying that let the NGO board operate within the law. Let us be procedural. Let us not use this chance to be, because some organizations, we have seen the UN and international organizations already criticizing the move by the NGO Act.
Right.
I think the government doesn't need that kind of attention right now. I think you would do President Kenyatta a favor by not opening a lot of battlefronts. Yes.
All right.
Yes, I think that is very, very critical.
All right, we'll have to wind up right there. Thank you very much, Daniel Juma, the Executive Director for Global Peace, and Jedida Wakonyo, who's a Commissioner with KNCHR. And, well, that's a dawn debate this morning. We want to take a short break right here on Kivumbi 20.